What's up, everybody? Overprime had a big announcement, and we didn't want to wait for the minions to talk about it. So that's what we're going to be doing here. I'm the Mangoose. He's the Viking Jedi. He's Jelly Knees. Now let's get into this. We're not going to go. We're going to dispense with the niceties. So it was a pretty big update, and it started with a video message from Ranger thanking everybody for participating in the CBT, but it detailed a lot of the things that they learned and a lot of the things that they're going to change. There's going to be some big changes coming to Overprime. So we're going to just go down through these notes. So they had the following goals in mind while they prepared for the second CBT: game characteristics, optimization, identifying server matchmaking issues found in the first CBT, and testing server stability and newly implemented methods in various locations. So about game characteristics, they received feedback that the game's quality, the completeness of the game art, and system details were underwhelming, and they agreed. And they strongly believe that the mentioned weaknesses must be improved in order for us to progress and reach our higher goals. So, Jelly, what do you think about this? Them just like working on game art and system details and that sort of thing. And what do they mean by system details in anyway? Do you know?
I imagine the system details are like the customization options for like graphic settings,
Okay.
frame rates, the whole nine yards. Because in Overprime, the frame cap and the frame rate that you wanted it to go at, whether it be 60 or 144, were the same setting, whereas a lot of games have that split up. And I think there are a bunch of settings that have um, that have more settings split off, where they kind of tried to simplify it. And I think to some aspects, simplifying it is great, but on other aspects, the people that want to go in and change just the post process versus overall quality, right? They want to be able to do those things. Um, I think one about this article in general for me, I think one thing I really like about it is that they flat out say our internal team agreed, right? It wasn't you guys said this, so we're fixing it, right? Which it has an implication of agreement, right? If we weren't going to fix it, that would be us telling you we don't agree, and if we're fixing it, we're telling you we do agree and want to get it fixed.
Right.
But having the direct statement of the internal team agreed, I think is really impactful to show that like we're with you. Like you brought this up and we went, you know what? You're right. Like that gives a lot of onus to the community to make it feel like their feedback is important and more valued than just changing something because of community feedback. Like it's that extra step that they didn't have to do, but I think goes a long way.
Viking, what do you think?
I mean, so for me, the key things that I like is exactly what Jelly mentioned. Is that they were listening to feedback, which is what we were hoping would happen. I mean, when we did our video, the big thing that we were talking about was like there's some obvious things that they need to work on. We need to see what they're going to do with that information. We want to hear about it, and I know we're at the very beginning of this, but like I think this is the start of exactly that. Like we asked for a thing. I think the community as a large, especially here in NA and EU, asked for certain expectations as far as what the game plan was going to be going forward, and they've laid it out in detail. And they didn't hold anything back from themselves. I think that's what I really took away from it. It's like we know these are some issues. We think we nailed this. We think we struggled on this. We're going to fix these things, improve on these things. Like that's I mean, and they hit it the nail on the head. For most of us who played it, the game was fun, and I think that's like probably a huge kudos to them and their team. That's probably what any game developer wants: is did our players have fun? And we did. I mean, and the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, it was only 11 days, but they were putting up numbers, concurrent viewers, or I'm sorry, players close to what we see out of the third largest MOBA in Smite. And when we were talking about before about what these games need to do to maybe make it to the mainstream or make it to where they're a competitive game in this market, it's putting up numbers like that. And I think this kind of dev blog as a whole is going to further solidify the players that one maybe felt like during the time of their play they were missing out on stuff, and so they were kind of put off on it. Maybe reading this, they're going to go, oh, they heard us, let's come back. Like, I can't wait for release now. Like, I'm really excited.
On this one specifically, like
Hmm.
completeness of game art, I don't think is really all that important as far as your goals to have in mind. Same thing with system details. It's a lot of stuff that I don't really personally agree that it is a failing of the game that needs to be addressed specifically. However, they are backed by Netmarble. We've talked about this in the last FTM. They have the money to eliminate choice. Like, they don't need to make these choices because they can just throw money at the problem. But I do like that they're interacting with the community. I just don't think, me personally, I just don't think this is the stuff that I would like for them to work on. I would like for them to bring better balance, more heroes. Like item art, I don't care about. If they're talking about specifically game art, if they're talking about animations, maybe. But other than that, I think their visual effects are top notch.
Yep.
Let's move on to optimization. So after reducing the size of the game, game stability and optimization have received positive reviews. However, there is still room for improvement. A higher level of optimization is required. Tutorials need to contain more information, and the training grounds need to be optimized 100%. These aspects are a player's first introduction to the game, and we found it to be lacking. The internal team completely agrees. In order to establish higher level of optimization, we are going to partner with experts in this field. So, Viking Jedi, what do you think?
I mean, that's like one of the key things that I was talking about last time we talked about what these guys need to do is they need to figure out how to not only get people introduced to their game as a whole, but make it to where new players who are coming in feel like they have a good launching pad to be able to get involved in the game. And so hearing them not only say that it's something that they want to see improvement on, but that they're going to focus and get like a team together specifically designed for that. It makes me a little worried that they didn't have that before, but I don't care. They're doing it now, and that's fine. Like, that's what we want. So I'm really excited to see what their training grounds looks like. I didn't think the actual like implementation of the training ground wasn't that bad. Like, I kind of liked the way that you could kind of run around fairly quickly. It wasn't like a full huge map like some places do the training grounds for. This one was a little bit smaller. You could get to things a little bit quicker. But I'm curious to see how they're going to do stuff as far as, like, again, helping junglers learn what an optimized route looks like in jungling, or some of those other aspects I think that the game might need to really help new players. But just hearing them say that they're going to focus a team and hiring a team or something along those lines, that makes me so excited. Like, I'm amped to see what it is. Hopefully it's actually good and not just, word fodder here.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think even their optimization in general, aside from just the training grounds, right, is that we're definitely, those first couple of games that we played was fine tuning the settings to like find, because we were having frame drops and frame stutters and those kind of things, right? And so fine tuning the settings to get it into a place. But all three of us have machines that should be able to run this game consistently.
Yep.
And we weren't getting that. So seeing that they're going to work on that as well, just in general, super huge. And then the training ground on top of that is just wonderful.
I think because they did a quick like hot fix like that night, right? The night before, or I'm sorry, after the launch initially. I think they did like a hot fix, and it fixed most of the issues I think we were all encountering for the most part. There were still a few hiccups every once in a while, but yeah, there were like some bugs that were weird and so forth. But it does, again, it speaks well that they, even though overall maybe most people were like, hey, it worked well, they're saying, well, it's still not as good as we want it to be, and we're going to keep putting emphasis on this. That's man, I'm so excited.
Yeah, that the tutorial, like the training grounds that you first load into, I think was the most poorly optimized portion of the game. And that's the first thing you see when you load in, and you're barely getting. I was getting like 3-4 frames a second in the tutorial, and it was terrible. One of the problems though was, again, this was a problem I had with the first closed beta test, and I put up a video about how to fix it. Was the game defaults to your integrated GPU if you have one of those, which I do. I have my like beefy GPU, and then I have my one that just came inside my computer, and it was defaulting to the integrated GPU, and it would just, my integrated GPU cannot handle this game.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm 12-year-old. I'm giggling at you, something coming in your GPU.
You are a 12-year-old. That's usually me saying shit like that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. As soon as you said it, I giggled. Anyway.
On to identifying server and matchmaking issues. These elements have seen improvements since the first CBT. The team has plans for further improvements for these elements. Please read the corresponding section below. So, let's go ahead and get into this section below, testing server stability and newly implemented method in various locations. So the maintenance performed during the second CBT was to test a few theories and changes. There was a positive impact on the servers, and the team saw that we could apply such features while the game is in service. So that's kind of exciting to see. In addition, we have collected information from various regions in the Middle East and Southeast Asia particularly. We found very positive indicators just as we did in the main server. Internal goals aside, the team received honest and thoughtful feedback from players regarding the game's characteristics. The team is making sure we take the time to thoroughly compile, organize, and analyze player feedback. Although we had goals for what we hoped to gain from the CBT, we believe listening to player feedback and improving the game are more important. We are working hard to fully utilize player feedback to make the game the best it can be. So this was a lot of information rolled up into one tiny little package there. I never had problems with server stability, first or second CBT, or anything wrong with matchmaking personally, but apparently some people did. I really like that they have their own expectations of what they want to see tested and improved, and then they adjust that according to player feedback. And I think that's the important takeaway here. Jelly, you got anything to say?
I think the biggest thing is that same line that you just talked about, right? It's really easy for developers to put on blinders and say, like, this is our game, this is what we want to focus on, and just focus on that. But at the end of the day, if your players don't want to play your game, whether it's what you wanted or not, the game won't play. Like, nobody will play the game, right? Like, you have to. I'm not saying take full consideration of player feedback and what they want, but you need to take some consideration. So seeing that they're adjusting their goals according to player feedback, I think is really important and good to see.
Anything?
Yeah. No, I mean, you guys hit that. I think the main things that are important in that. I mean, it's cool to see that they're. I know during the game we were like, man, they're doing like an update a night, or they're doing some kind of small patch a night. What is going on? So it was cool that that's what they were testing. They wanted to see if during live play, during live servers, essentially what it would look like and how they could implement that stuff. And I mean, for the most part, all the patches loaded well. I don't think there was anything that broke. I think the only one that was really kind of weird was maybe the minion fixes that they did. Some of the collisions that we would encounter with the minions, I think, got a little screwy after that update. But again, if they're aware of it and they're noticing, then that's what they were testing for, was seeing what it looks like doing live updates. While because that's what's going to look like when the game comes out. They're not going to just shut everything down and be able to take a week to fix everything. They're going to have to be putting out these live patches. So from that perspective, I think that it's cool that they were. That's one of the things that they were testing, because I didn't even think about that. But then again, I'm not a game developer, so.
Well, and we've talked about that in the past, Mangoose, of one of the advantages that Fault has over these other games, even when they're all in full launch, is Fault has had 2 years of practicing pushing out patches.
Yeah.
Right? And so to see them go into this closed beta test, and we theorized that they would do this before with how long it was, right? But seeing them go into this closed beta test and push patches and implement hotfixes and do all of these things is giving them that practice before they go into a full launch environment, whether it be early access or a full launch, right? Like that, it gives them that practice that they need to know where their shortcomings are for patches by themselves, let alone the rest of the game.
One thing I want to kind of bring it back to what they were talking about with the player feedback and everything. That's sort of one of the things that kind of killed off Paragon. Was Epic certainly had their own view of what Paragon should be, and they seemed to completely ignore anything that the players wanted. Like, people would put in really good suggestions and ask for, certain changes, but what they would change and what they actually made, the changes they actually made, were vastly different from what the players were actually asking for. And it's because they were trying to gain the focus of the FPS and third-person shooter market as opposed to the MOBA market. And so Paragon became less and less of a MOBA as time went by. And that was because they weren't listening to player feedback. They were just doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that's standing out to me when I was reading this is we are working hard to fully utilize player feedback to make the game the best it can be. I think that as people read through this, as we read through this, that's something that consistently pops up is feedback utilizing it. Like, and when we talked again, I know I keep bringing it back up, but what we wanted to see from Overprime, what we want to see from these companies is good communication about what it is that you're doing, and are you listening to us? Because we're the ones who are going to be playing your game. We're the ones who are going to be talking to our friends about playing your game, and all. So it's, I don't know, man. I'm excited just from that alone, that we want to. I mean, hopefully, the proof is in the pudding. But so far, just what I've been able to see in the small time that we've been able to keep an eye on these guys is they have been. So I'm really excited about that. Just the continuous, honest, thoughtful feedback from players. Like, everything is regarding what we have talked about, and that's the main focus of their development, which is it's so exciting to hear from a developer, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's making me an Overprime stan, to be honest. Like, I'm like getting genuinely excited for this game to come out. Like, I want to see what they do.
Let's move on to the next section, improving in-game art aesthetics and quality. While it's too early to share any details on this topic, what we can tell players is that the quality of the in-game art is constantly being fine-tuned and already much improved. We promise that upgrades regarding these topics will be shared regularly through multiple channels. I really think they're talking about item art. What do you guys think?
I don't
No?
actually.
Okay.
No. Because partly because of the next section, which we'll talk about then, but also I think that this is a very general art in general, art, in-game art. So VFX, map effects, portal effects, Shadow Realm, right? All of these things, I all fall under in-game art for me, right? And so it's animations fall under that as well, right? Every kind of art, right? Anything that would be in art that falls under in-game, I think is getting improved on. Partly, I mean, like you said with the animations in your recent video, Mangoose, you broke down that the animations are slightly sloppier, for lack of a better way to put it. They're not as crisp and clean, right? And that's an in-game art thing that they can work on and fix. The visual effects, I know there were some people that said the visual effects were over the top, like they were too flashy. They almost distracted you from what was going on. So that can be fine-tuned to keep them at a good balance of flashy and versus useful, right? And so I think all of that kind of stuff can go in there, and I think the item art is a separate thing.
Okay. Anything on the topic, Jedi?
No, I mean, I guess it could have maybe something to do with item art, but it's not specifically mentioned here. So I kind of agree with Jelly that I think that if that was something that was specifically being focused, they would put it. But just the overall art and aesthetics and the keyword there, quality of it, I think is something that you guys touched on in the last video, is wanting to see a little bit more of the fidelity. Ah. Yeah, so I and that's obviously again encouraging. I know I'm the worst. Again, I know I'm being maybe again too much of a stan here, but I love that the finishing sentence there is, we promise that updates regarding these topics will be shared regularly through multiple channels. So again, committing to communication, committing to keeping us informed about what they're doing, and because I think if they continue to do that, if something looks weird, the players immediately they're going to tell you, like, oh no, we hate that, don't do that, that sucks. And if they genuinely want to make changes quickly based off of that kind of stuff, they don't want to release a game that we're going to hate, that's exciting. So I can't wait to see what those changes look like and get more details on them, because obviously it seems like that's part of when they mention polishing up the game. I'm assuming that's the major portion of their polish that they're looking at, is making those this game quality and aesthetics smoother for everybody.
And I think a big thing that also falls under the in-game aesthetics is the LODs, or the levels of detail, on environment and pop-in. Because I heard people complain nonstop that the pop-in, you're 5 feet from something and it's suddenly appearing a bush, right? Even non-gameplay important things, but an aesthetic of the map would suddenly appear, right? Even on the highest settings, you'd get pop-in really, really, really close to you, which is a performance thing, right? Like, the less you have to have populated past a certain point, the better the performance is going to be. So I think that's probably something they're also working on under this category, is in finding a better balance of having things appear and disappear, but keeping performance at a relatively good state.
Yeah, I didn't notice any of that, to tell you the truth.
I didn't personally either, but I know that it was something that I saw on Reddit. People would talk about it, and it might be on different machines, and depending on what setting you have at what. I think I was running at mostly max, so I didn't encounter too many of those things. But yeah.
Okay. Now let's move on to enhancing game characteristics. Hero and item expansion. The team has spent the past few months improving the back end and efficiently reviewing the game balance through statistics, and we've seen some positive results. We have been preparing for the live game release for months. Now we're getting ready for early access by adding heroes and items. We are thrilled to introduce new hero and item combinations that will increase gameplay excitement and possible strategies. So what do you think, Jelly? New heroes and new items?
I mean, we all talked about the itemization was poor in terms of diversity of items, right? So hearing that they're gonna add new items, fantastic, big fan, do it, can't wait. Heroes, we also knew that was coming. I'm curious to see how many heroes are getting put in for the early access release, because it sounds like from this category that's the next step is early access, not another test. It's going to be an actual early access release. So and it says heroes, not a hero, and items, not item. So that implies multiple. So I'm curious at what threshold that is at. Now we've seen several concept arts for heroes that are not in the game. I think if I had to guess off the top of my head, 4 probably that we've seen concept art for of the Paragon heroes, and then we've seen 2 of their own heroes be teased in various ways as well. So maybe we'll get an additional 6 characters. That's probably a bit high to add in one at one go. But I mean, even if it's 3 and then they add the other 3 over the course of their release schedule, like they talked about before, I think that's huge. So overall, I think this is fantastic, and I think they know where their bread and butter is of keeping players excited for the game, and that's in itemization and heroes.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I got really excited when I read heroes and items. Hopefully it wasn't a translating error. But no, honestly, and I completely agree with Jelly's take that it's by them mentioning early access, that's probably where we're heading to next. I would be surprised if they do another playtest, at least an open playtest like they did. Maybe they'll have a closed beta playtest or something along those lines. But yeah, no, I think that was one that we were really talking about. Itemization, heroes, or a combination of the two is something that felt really, really lacking. One thing I can, again, give kudos to them is that for the most part, all the champions that they had felt really good. They were all pretty significant. We talked about how they made significant changes in some to really, grab the life of that character. And so I'm excited to see what the next releases of them are. I mean, Narbash was obviously released during, and we immediately felt the impact of what having him in the game looks like. I mean, he was the highest winning percentage champion in the game, so that makes I'm excited for whatever heroes they're going to be releasing. Obviously, I'm sure there's going to be some fan favorites that either are going to be excited or disappointed because they didn't make it. But yeah, the addition of their own characters. Like, I mean, we keep talking about wanting to separate from Paragon, and people in the comments keep telling us to stop talking about Paragon and comparing these games to Paragon. Well, what they're going to need to do is come up with something original. So if they release 2 or more original characters as part of early access, I think that will speak exactly towards what we want. Like, this is our game. This is our style of approaching this game. And here's a representation of that. And we hope you like it. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
As far as new heroes go, I like to think, like, for those of us that played Overprime, like, from the beginning, from like years and years ago, a lot of people think Overprime's new. Overthrow Paragon was going for a while, even before Overprime. But thinking back, I know heroes that I remember playing in Overprime that I have not seen yet. Sereth would be one. They had Sereth in there. Gadget was one. And Howitzer. They had Howitzer as part of that. So
Boris,
exactly, yep.
And we've seen art for Wukong.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen art for Howitzer, I think we have. Was Aurora in Overprime at one point?
No.
Can't remember.
No.
But so even that's 6, right?
Yeah.
So that's...
We've seen Iggy and Scorch on the map.
That's
on
true.
their map. And we've seen Crunch on their map. So...
and we've seen a Crunch skin, actually, now that you mention it. We've seen a Crunch concept art. So that's 7 or 8 now. that were either in the game or they've been developing concept art for. Well, if you're developing new skins, you probably have the character
Yeah,
close to being ready in some form,
right.
right? So,
I'm really
uh,
excited to see what they come up with for skins for Iggy and Scourge.
yeah, agreed. And even actually using Ulug or Narbash as a reference,
Mhm.
we've seen Narbash, that concept art of the like bones and like super like I think of Roadhog from Overwatch, honestly. Um Narbash skin that they had a concept art for, but it wasn't in the game when he released. So that means that theoretically their art team is behind their character development team. So that these characters may all be done and we're seeing the art for them just as a secondary thing
Yeah,
long past.
I hope so. That would be great if that was the
Yep.
case.
Do you guys know? Because I don't, but do they do their skins like League does, where their skins are basically independent characters into themselves, or are they reskins of the actual
They're
model?
reskins of
You
the
know?
actual model.
Are they? Okay. So that, I mean, if that's the case, then it probably makes it a lot more difficult for them to be able to implement it, because I think that's why League does it the way they do, even though it's a little bit heavier in some aspects. I think they keep the models on their side until you're loading into game, and then you'll get that load on your side as a player. But if it's an individual reskin, then that might be a heavier load for them. I don't know, but I'd be interested to learn more about what that looks like, and that might be part of the reason why it's a little bit harder for them to release. Maybe like again, we got to play Narbash, but they weren't ready to release the skins, and it's because it wasn't. It's a reskin of the actual character, which means you have to have a whole coding behind it.
I mean, just from my experience with dicking around with the Unreal Engine and messing I've changed my own skins around in there, just the colors, just recolors, but it's fairly simple to do. I think I don't think League runs off Unreal Engine, does it?
No.
Oh no, they have their own engine, I think, actually.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier for them to just apply the skin to the base skeletal mesh. Another quick aside, something you kind of brought up a little bit as far as translations. This is probably the most error-free post that they have ever made. Like, the paragraph structure is way the fuck off. Like, crazy indents and sentences stopping. But like, yeah, it's obvious that they have like a real interpreter to actually put this stuff in English for us that aren't bilingual. And so let's move on to implementing ranked games and utilizing situational MMR. We received some complaints during the CBT because only the quick battle mode was included. Players questioned the quality and sustainability of the game. The team is planning to implement ranked games before early access as one of our primary focuses. Various MMRs such as quick battle, ranked games, and placement tests will be implemented, so players can experience different high-quality gameplay types that are suitable for their play levels. Oh, man.
Chills. Yeah, I got
Okay,
chills.
Jedi, you obviously have something to say.
I mean, it really it speaks to itself. I'm just excited that that's something that's a priority for them to have at early access. I don't want to just play quick battle. Not that quick battle is obviously the worst thing ever, but I'm excited to see what their MMR looks like. So that's what I'm more interested in. Ranked versus non-ranked, I don't really care about, but it's more about like what does a competitive MMR look like versus a semi usable MMR, right? You shouldn't have brand new players going up against seasoned vets. That just doesn't make sense. So I don't want to touch on it too much because we're going to jump into it a little bit, but the matchmaking logic as well, they talk about that, and it goes a little bit more into detail. So I'm just excited for that. I'm excited to see what their version of an MMR looks like. It can be, in a lot of cases with competitive games, a make or break type of system. So if they nail it well, where the fidelity of the games feel like you're being challenged, you're not either Goomba stomping the other team or getting Goomba stomped by a team. If every match feels competitive and fun, then you're gonna have a stoked player base, and that's obviously what we all want. So hearing them making it a priority to be part of early access, Ah, dude, I'm so excited. Like I just want to see what it's like. I want to get in there. Yeah, and the other part too, the play levels. Like, they want high quality gameplay types with in giving that the suitable play levels for their players, and that just again speaks to them hearing us, listening, and I mean, when I say us, I mean us. That's three right here sitting talking. No, Jay. Yeah, they watch the video for sure. But no, I mean, I just think that they listen to the players, and that it's obvious that that's a big thing that we all want. And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling at this point because I'm just so excited. I got chills honestly as you reread it because I was just like, let's go ranked, man. MMR. What about you, Jelly?
I think an MMR system, when you have as many players as you did, is definitely something that they needed, right? At least in some fashion, because of that exact concept of if the five of us, right, win 30 games in a row, right? Even if it's as a five stack or not, right? The system says these guys are really good. Why are you placing us against new players that have never played the game before, right? Like
Hmm.
that will always feel bad, and that's to an extent some of these other games' problem in that they're, and granted that's a player based thing, but they're matching high experienced players versus low experienced players. So being able to bring that closer to center and have it be more even match, I think is absolutely huge. In addition, ranked mode is a double-edged sword for a game in early access, right? And
Yes.
and on the good end of that, right? You have a place for lack of a better way to put it, the sweaty tryhards to go, right? You want to try hard in this game where you're going to be toxic to players for playing badly and not doing the right move. There's your place. That's where you go. You play the game in ranked, right? You want to play normals? That can be a casual place where players can learn how to play the game, learn new characters, learn new things, right? Whatever it may be, right? And that aspect, when that is what is done, can be really helpful for a game because then you don't have people being toxic to new players that are just learning it for the first time. Uh, Vice versa, though, you then also increase your toxicity tenfold in a ranked mode that can then turn people off of the game even faster than they would have in a normal mode. And so it's a really hard thing to gauge and balance. Knowing how quick they were though to throw the ban hammer at people
Mm.
that were doing any manner of things, but toxicity specifically, also makes me happy though, because if a ranked mode gets implemented and that toxicity does start to climb, you'll start seeing these be doled out a lot more effectively, I think. And it'll help them know what to look for and then make it even better going forward. What about you, Mangoose? How do you feel about all this?
MMR, 100% need it. Ranked, I don't know if we need it yet. I
Hmm.
don't know if they have the player base for it, and I don't know if they have the player base for it. I don't know if they have enough heroes for it. They definitely don't have enough items for it. Um, I really look forward to having a ranked mode, but I don't think it needs to be there before early access. I know a lot of people are going to completely disagree with me there, but and also their drafting system, just in quick battle draft system, was one of their weak points. Like the way
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
drafted heroes was like you had to pick a hero and then pick a lane, and then it was weird. I don't even know how to explain it, but they definitely, if because rank to me implies that you're going to have at least one ban and you're not going to have mirror matching. That's
Hmm.
what ranked implies to me,
And as
and
of
I
that
don't think
test,
they have enough heroes for that.
they had 18 characters in that last test.
Right.
Yeah. So they had 18 characters, which means you've got 10 of those picked, and at least probably I would say three bans a team. That's 16 picked or banned between the two. That leaves two out of the pool every game. That's not enough. So, but if we go back to what we were saying earlier about adding characters, if they do add 6 or 8 characters going into that, that could push them to the point where I would say that ranked from a character standpoint is more feasible
Hmm.
because you have more variations of what you can do and what you can play with. I would honestly say if they add one character in each role as the 6 characters that they add, right? So 5 that each go into a different role, and then one that can be a second in one of the roles. That would help drastically. Because if they do 4 mid laners, a jungler, and an off laner, that's a problem. Because
Yeah.
then I just go into ranked and I ban out all of the 3 ADCs. And what are you going to do now?
Right.
Right? Like, especially if my team going in can practice non ADC play, and then I just go in there and completely remove a class of hero, that's a problem. So you have to have enough that you can circumvent bans. you can bans don't change the meta of the game as the majority of players play it,
Right.
right? And so you have to be able to combat that in some way.
And them saying that this is one of their primary focuses, I would hope that more heroes is another one of their primary focuses.
100%.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to say, Jedi? You look like you're perking up.
I mean, I was just gonna kind of go based off, rebuttal a little bit with you guys. I think if this is a priority and you're hoping that they're being smart about it, that those things are part of that discussion when they mention rank and MMR. I don't know if I would go this to say that you need to have like either full ban system or have maybe one ban per team, but you do need to have drafting, and if you have to, there has to be ability to be able to select the role, whether you're a solo queue player or coming in as a 5-man. But it's most important, I think, as a solo. If you're going in as a duo or whatever, being able to select the role that you want, and having the matchmaking combined with that, having people go into a ranked and then being forced to not only not get the role that they want, but also be paired up with against like a 5-man stack would be just the worst feeling ever. So I hope that they're taking a hard look at that. I'm kind of also hoping that by the priority that they've listed these items on their thing, that this is the second in priority behind champions and all the other things that we were discussing, items and all that stuff. So you would hope that encompassing all of those things will help it feel better if there is a actual ranked system and what that looks like. But yeah, I would agree if they roll it out and it doesn't have those things addressed, then it's going to really, really hurt the game, like really, really bad. So I hope they're smart. Feel like they have been kinda so far. And if they're going to implement a mode like this, that they have it prepped for exactly what you're expecting in a competitive mode like ranked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Team Solive, if you're watching this and want 3 people to look at your ranked mode and say if it's good or not, I might know 3 people to
Big true.
so this next one though, I'm really excited for, and I didn't realize it wasn't a thing before. So it makes me happy to see that it's going to be a thing.
Mhm.
The fact that apparently in the last CBT, stacks were not put against stacks, or there was no prioritizing of stacks v stacks, right?
Mhm.
So they're planning to separate 5-player party system and a single player matchmaking system, so that you will have consistency in play, right? So if there's 2, 3 stacks on either team and then 2 solos, right? Something to make it feel like the coordination levels are at least somewhat similar. Because I can say for sure that when we were 5 stacking during the last CBT, there were definitively games that it was like we were coordinating 1 million times better than the 5
Yeah.
solos on the other team, no
100%.
question,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really cool to see that, and it's honestly most effective for the jungler in any role to be paired, because then you can coordinate ganks more effectively that way,
Mhm.
or for the duo lane to be paired. So at the bare
Mhm.
minimums, if they even go that far and say that if there's a 2 stack on each team, that they're hoping to match them up as both of them are in the duo lane, or they usually play duo laners or whatever it may be, to try and keep that as consistent as possible.
Yeah, this is
I
definitely needed. It's
Yeah.
going to avoid so much player frustration because I guarantee even when I see this a lot, even when people aren't facing a 5 stack, they just happen to be facing a better team. They just write it off as, oh, that was definitely a 5 stack. It's like, nah, they just rotated. That's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
But this takes that out of their mind. Like they're not frustrated because they at least think that they were up against a 5 stack.
Yeah, 100%. And between this and the MMR system change, that's going to really make matchmaking feel 10 times better.
Mm-hmm. Jedi, anything to say?
No, again, it's one of those things. Just I'm happy to see it. They're obviously wanting to make sure that it's not a toxic experience for the solo queue player. I know all of us did play solo queue, and I hated it. To be honest, I didn't. I actually got to the point where when I was loading in because I wanted to play the game and I didn't have anybody to queue up with, I was like, you know what, this sucks. I don't want to play solo queue because you ended up getting defaulted into a role that you didn't necessarily want to play, and so it just ruined the fun of it. And even in a low cost, low like risk scenario, it just took away from the fun aspects. Whereas when we were, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacked, it became immediately better. Like you at least then were able to coordinate and make things happen. So I want the queue, because again, not everybody's going to have a full 5 stack. So having a solo queue or a solo better experience is key, I think, to making the game successful overall. Them mentioning that as a key metric for themselves is huge. And so anybody who played it, got a bad experience playing solo, this is for you. This is them addressing your concerns and hopefully making it better for you.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is pretty big. Pretty big.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Changing skill point usage. One of the big things about Overprime is you start out with all of your skills unlocked, with the exception of your ultimate. They're changing that so that now it's more like a traditional MOBA where you start with one skill unlocked, and then as you level up, you unlock your skills even further. So this is definitely them listening to players. I personally didn't have a problem with having 3 skills unlocked from the beginning, but Jelly, I know you got a lot to say on this.
Yeah. From multiple aspects too. I completely understand the want to change this from starting with all of your abilities down to 1, right? Mainly from a jungle perspective, because the junglers are created kind of in that way of that their level 3 is usually the moment that they can go start ganking lanes, right? And that's true across the vast majority of MOBAs. Maybe level 2 sometimes, but for the most part, it's level 3. When you have a game where your jungler automatically has that power to just start immediately with their gank ability off the cuff. I mean, we saw it in our games all the time. I would literally clear one camp, run straight in there and be like, okay, double kill. Like the majority of our games.
Yep.
And that from that perspective, totally get it. 100% needs to be changed. The other side of this coin, though, is that is a complete and total balance overhaul, because the game was balanced with 3 starting abilities in mind. And even if you say that the lanes balance each other out because they're facing somebody with the exact same number of skills, which I think was true with 3. Again, I think this comes down to junglers a lot more. The jungle is balanced around having 3 abilities at level 1. So if you take away 2 of those abilities, and they're damaging abilities no less, the jungle difficulty goes through the roof very, very quickly, at least for those initial couple minutes of the game. It'll slow down ganks, which I think is understandable and okay. I'll be sad about it because I loved going in at 1 minute getting double kills, right? But it makes sense to me that that's the change they're making. But the balance changes that have to go with it bring me some concern, just in general, because that's a lot to change all at once for every character in the game.
For me, this also feels like a slowdown, right? This is an easy way to slow down the game a little bit. I think a big reason why we were able to do the strategy that we, impacted onto the map was because we had access to. I mean, again, using the Narbash as an example, he had the heal, the speed up, and the stun. So we were able to go and do those early objectives basically for free. It immediately changes the way that we would play the whole game as a whole because of that. And I think I mean, I'm a little bit sad because I did like the speed of the game. I kind of wish that they would have maybe found a different way to slow down the game if this is part of that. And I think a lot of players' frustrations were with teams that were more organized like ours being able to make impacts very rapidly because we had 3 abilities and we were able to utilize that more. And again, I think that there's other ways they could have slowed down the game. But if this is what they're using and they feel like this is the way to, immediately be able to slow it, I do have the same concerns about, in general. I think even like for the supports, like not having access to some of their abilities right away is going to be really difficult because they kind of struggle as it is. You might have to force a whole different strategy. Maybe the jungler and support team up earlier on to help clear through the jungle. I'm not sure. I don't know what this looks like. I'm excited to try it, obviously, and see how it goes. And maybe there's a place in there where they find some kind of happy medium to get those skills leveling faster. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I'm 50-50 on it. I could see it being beneficial, again, slowing the game down. Also, same concept. It does add a bit of concern for the overall play of the game and how it's gonna. Like, it would be really funny if you're dying before you've had a chance to hit level 3 because you can't kill your jungle camps.
Yeah. Oh, that would happen 100%. Because in getting leashed, like you guys, and I realized most players didn't have this, but I think it was part of what helped us be successful. right? I would have the dual lane leash for me on whichever buff. Usually it was red buff. Um,
Mhm.
on red buff, right? And having, if it was a Muriel leashing for me, having her shield help keep me healthy so I can come in and be stronger faster. Having Narbash be able to heal me, having a stun, having these things at level 1 doesn't just stop at my own abilities as a jungler, it's my support now helping me out and my carry now helping me out.
Right.
And so I think the best example of level 3 being a potential detriment to the game, I think is that finals game of the tournament that Mangoose and I were commentating for,
Yeah.
because that started at a level 1 fight in the enemy's jungle, and it came down to who had the stronger first 3 levels in their abilities,
100%.
right? And characters are built with level 3 power spikes, like I was mentioning with junglers, but even
Yep.
normal characters have that, right? Narbash being able to have his stun, an attack speed and move speed boost, and a heal at level 1 means that he is so much stronger than a lot of other people on the map, and
Yep.
have those be an AoE no less.
Yep.
So level 1, the team with the Narbash ended up winning the fight. And it shows because he was able to heal his team while still giving out CC, while giving out the move speed, while doing all of these things. And there wasn't a lot of answer to that yet because everyone was on the same playing field. And
Mhm.
so having those 3 abilities early on, you basically have to have your balance be absolutely perfect for that to be something that's sustainable. And perfect balance is not something that's going to happen in any of these games, let
Right.
alone to a team that's developing a new game going
Right.
forward.
I think this impacts, like you guys said, it impacts junglers and supports by far the most, and a big
Mhm.
reason for that is the blink item that the mid laner,
Mhm.
and ADC, and the off laner get at the start of the game, because that's really where your choices matter at the first levels. Is when do you unlock your escape?
Mhm.
If you have a blink, you don't have to worry about your escape until later on. So, like
Mhm.
Gideon, like that's a big thing with Gideon is a lot of times if a Gideon didn't unlock their portal first, then the jungler would have an easy time ganking him because he would not have any escape whatsoever. He no way to get out of it, but he has a blink in Overprime. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think this is going to mainly impact. It's going to impact because the junglers don't have a blink. You have a smite.
Yep.
The supports don't have a blink. I guess they could pick one up, but usually the support has the item that allows you to place wards.
Yep.
So it's going to be easier to gank supports, and it'd be harder for the junglers to actually gank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
I'm
like this
sure
change personally.
I don't either. I'd actually prefer it to stay the same, but I understand why they're making it at the
Yeah.
same time.
Right. I
Um,
I think the big two, what you're, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think the big one is kind of exactly what you talked on. I think balancing it around having 3 to start, it's just, and using that example was perfect because you have, like, again, they had that, they set their whole team up for that idea too. Like, and I'm all for rewarding strategic play, right? I talk about it all the time. I want this to be a strategic game, but there's a big difference in that when, players are utilizing their skills and outsmarting things and making things work for themselves versus just my character is the strongest at level 1, it's going to be better than yours. Like, you are going with this and mine is this. Like, they had knockups, they had CC, they had everything. It was so much better thought out, but it shouldn't be that the game ends because they took a better level 1. Like,
Mhm.
but that's what it was. They basically lost the game because their jungler was so far behind. There was no chance they were getting contested at the black buff. They were not going to get contested at the prime. They're just yeah. So I'm curious. I'm sad because I did think it was cool starting with your 3 abilities. I thought it made the laning phase so much more fun. I think it was fun having your jungler actually be meaningful in the first 3 minutes of the game versus having to wait till the minute 5 or something until they were valuable. Or at least for the laner. Obviously, they're valuable in general, but for the laners. But I do think it'll reduce invading, which I know was a big deal for a lot of people. I saw that on Reddit. People talked about, like, in the solo queue environment, that being invaded by teams at level 1 was really difficult to deal with as a jungler when you didn't have the support of your laners like we were
Mhm.
doing for you. So yeah, that's my final point on it. I think that's the big one. It's sad to see it go, but I, again, totally understand, especially from a balance perspective of how it might make sense to do so.
yep.
The next topic I found a little bit odd too. The team had multiple debates regarding the map's difficulty and overall feel. That basically they thought it was too complicated to promote strategic and fun play and too difficult for new players. So they're going to be simplifying the map design, jungle paths, and buildings are going to be simplified and optimized to be more intuitive and strategic. Jelly, you and I talked about this a little bit already,
Mhm.
as far as how could they simplify this map. And the one of the things we were talking about is there's a lot of one-way entrances, and
Mhm.
that confused a lot of people. You would see people trying to get to like to the Raptor or to the Prime Pit, and they would go to where they thought they could go through, and they couldn't.
And I think those are the two biggest locations where that was a problem. Right? There's also a one-way behind Blue Buff on both sides. And there's one ways. I think there's one other place where there's a one way. And so it makes it a little more difficult to judge what that is. But I think, like you said, Prime and the Prime Spirit and the Prime Guardian were the two that were the most confusing. Because I mean, even in our games, we would get to the point where it'd be like, "Oh, we're going for Prime," and it'd be going the long way around because we
Yeah.
hit the one way or we got turned around or whatever it may be, right? So I think, and we played a lot of Overprime when is in that last test. So for new players especially, I think that's a huge thing to fix, and getting rid of those one ways or promoting other ways to do that is a really good idea. The other place, and I really am mixed about this one. The walls on either side of duo lane, there were these walls there that initially don't look like you could walk up them, but it was not hard to walk straight up
Yeah.
those walls. And if anything, those were the better gank paths than going
Mm-hmm.
straight through the shadow pool 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if they're going to change those to make it look more obvious, because I know new players would walk around all the time, right? Or they're going to remove the ability to do that on duo lane to potentially help break up some of that. Because yeah, I would use that path 9 times out of 10 probably to get up into the lane rather than or get away from someone chasing me as well, because you come right up those walls on your allied side and you're basically in tower range. Like you're that close. So I'm curious to see what they do with that in terms of the item the map as well. Jungle pathing is terrible. Like I was thinking it wasn't as bad, but it's pretty bad because to be effective, right? In a lot of junglers' minds, you're either going buff to buff and looking for a gank, or you're trying to clear a side out and then look for a gank either in the mid lane or the side lane, depending on which side you're on. If you're looking at dual lane, which is going to be one of the more impactful lanes to gank, you have to go from the red buff toward mid lane and then back toward the duo lane to clear all three camps and then go to duo lane, which feels odd. It feels like you're going backwards to go forwards. Like it's this weird feeling to have to do that and have to take so much time to do that. So I'd hope they streamline that a little bit where it doesn't feel as out of the way to go through that path.
It's not even a
Um,
direct route either. It's like go up and around and then back into this
y-
way for this
yeah,
camp, and then or over or around here for this camp. And
it's a little odd. I kind of learned to like it, but that's because once you have that pathing down, it's not intuitive in any way, shape, or form. But once you have that pathing down, you can benefit from it because the other players don't have that pathing down,
yeah,
right? And so it's one of those things I really hope to see that streamlined, but I'll be sad to see it go at the same time.
Jedi, what do you got to say about the map?
So I initially, I when I first read it, I was kind of like torn on what it was that they were trying to accomplish here. But it again, so because they're not going into full detail of what that looks like, right? So we're gonna have to wait and see what they mean by these words, right? But simplification, I think, is always a tough word, right? Because you don't want it to be so simple that that it's obvious. You know what I mean? Necessarily, like you want an intuitive without being obvious. I know that's what's kind of like a conundrum, but I think if it's too obvious, then it makes it to where strategic smart play, especially again from the jungler. Not to stroke Jelly's ego too much here about being the jungler, but I think the most across a lot of MOBAs, and especially my favorite types of MOBAs, the strategic play does typically come from your jungler, like the really smart, intelligent junglers who understand pathing, understand gank timings, and all those types of things. Will have a huge impact. And if you remove the ability for the jungler to revolutionize and make strategic choices about what they do with their time, because that's really what it comes down to is time utilization, right? And so if you make it too obvious, then that part becomes less fun, I would say, for a jungler. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just that it hasn't been done right before, and if that's kind of what they're going to go with, it becomes still really fun for a jungler because they're maybe just more obviously able to impact lanes and do things. I'm excited to see what they do for the map itself. I've always felt like, all the remakes of the maps do confuse the crap out of players. None of them are exactly the same, so you can't even utilize the fact that you are familiar with it from previous iterations of the game. I honestly, as far as like making it more simple, I would like to see it like, to be honest, League of Legends map I think is pretty simple. You have one big river going straight up and down. Neutral objectives are in that river. I think Ethereal is doing a good job with their map design as far as that, creating that. Like, hey, if you want to go to this, you follow the river, like, or it's directly off the path, you can see it. And I think they did that with this in where the black buff was. It was a straight line from duo lane to mid lane. It's right there, so you know it. And so if they do something like that with the prime and off lane, I think that will be cool to see what that looks like. I do want it to be still where prime is not necessarily visible from those lanes, like the black buff is visible to us. We can see if they're doing it. I do think they could have some kind of shrouding or something along those lines too, where it could be sneaked, quote unquote. You have to invest vision, is more what I mean. Like, you actually put wards down. But yeah, so I'm very excited and also nervous to see what they mean by that, because the jungle pathing in particular, I do want things to be more intuitive for players who are new. Like, they're like, you know what, I want to be that guy. I listen to the Viking Jedi and I want to be the guy making the impacts on the map. But then you get into and they're like, oh my god, where do I go? What do I do? And I don't think that junglers should be winning, like Jelly mentioned in his example, because he just had gotten used to the path, and therefore knowing that the other guy doesn't know that path yet or hasn't shown that they know it, I'm going to be more, I have a more advantageous. It should be skill over skill. And I do think that there's other games where you see that a lot more, where the jungler is able to outskill their opponent by being smart of utilization of the map versus just the map creating artificial barriers rather than being skill barriers. Does that make sense? I hope I explained that well. What about you, Mingus? Anything?
One thing I kind of disagree with is this map is kind of 1-for-1 Legacy Paragon. So, like, if you have played Paragon before and played Legacy Paragon, you are somewhat familiar with this map. It's just like kind of the middle of the map. Like, they, of course, took out a turret, which changes things a little bit. But, like, the middle of the map was pretty much 1-for-1. I could definitely see where new players would be very confused, whereas old school Paragon players know that I can come out of this shadow well, jump into my jungle, and go over here.
Yeah.
Like, there was a couple of times where it was very intuitive for me as to where to go, because I was so, like, Legacy just came into my mind. So
yeah, and that's I probably would say I'm the same way, Mangoose, because I played way more Legacy than I did on Monolith. So once I have 2 games under my belt in Overprime, it feels like old hat. Like, I'm just sitting there like, oh, okay, yep, I know exactly where to go. I know how the pathing works. I know all of these things, no problem. But for new players, that's just not the case.
And it just feels weird for how many other changes that Overprime has made to the game, and separating themselves so much from Paragon to have a map that is just Legacy.
The other big thing that I would love to see changed on their map, and not drastically, but the portals. The portals themselves, I think, need to come online later in the game. Because, for instance, like I mentioned earlier, right? Level 3, into a lane, get a double kill. I can immediately take the portal down to off lane and get a triple kill. Like, within the timer, actually get a triple kill, not even just get a third kill, right? And that is really fast for 2 minutes into the game.
Well, but that's with their changes of the skill point usage, right? Like, so I'm curious if you'll have a different, because I know we all shared that same opinion initially. We were like, dude, it's you as a jungler especially, or even as a foursome or whatever, we can move as a group and impact the other side of the map super fast and make things happen that the other team might not be prepared for. But do you think that, like, with basically you not being able to come and gank at minute 2 or 3 and having to take your time, not being as healthy as you usually were coming into the lanes to be able to do those things, like, that could be an artificial slowing down? Because one of the things I don't want to lose is so, like, for example, there was times when Convey, as my support, would decide that I'm in a good place or I'm backing and he doesn't want to back yet. He would take the portal and go and help side lane. or do something. You know what I mean? And I thought that was kind of a fun strategic thing that we were constantly, as we got better at the game, we were constantly like, wait, how many are available? Oh, dude, they left my lane. They could be coming through. And I think that there is, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit too much, but I just think that with it now reducing your skill levels, like you're not going to kind of be starting with all your stuff. The portals coming online later, I actually think would make the game even slower than it might, even with just as it is with the one skill point change.
I think you potentially need to move it back in line with the jungler's first gank if they were going to go straight from the entire red side of the jungle into duo lane, right? So in line before was the problem, but that in line is also now 3 minutes later or 2 minutes later, whatever it may be. So it's still up at the same time the jungler could theoretically get a double kill and transfer over, but that offlaner has had another minute and a half to build something up, right? A lot of the time, it was before even that first minion wave could really clear out and the lanes push one way or another that I could teleport on through and go already start doing it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's the problem more so than the actual timing of when it falls, is that off lane or whichever lane I'm teleporting to, in a lot of those cases, hasn't had the time to do anything yet
Right.
to circumvent me from doing that.
Right.
And I think that's the bigger problem.
I think there should be a player-specific timer on when you can take the portal. So it limits how many... Because there's like a limiter on the portal of how many people can go through at once, which can be cheesed because you can have one person just go back and forth until the portal is down. If you put it on the player, like you can only take that portal every 5 minutes or something, then that would limit it for when the first person could take it, and it would limit snowballing. What I'm thinking of in particular is I was playing with Windu and Bearded and them, and it was a game where we were basically punching babies. It was brand new players. I could tell that they never even played Paragon before. The mid laner with Gideon, I killed the mid laner, rotated over, killed the duo, then I went through the portal and killed off lane. By the time I got back to mid lane, the mid laner was there, killed them. By the time I got to duo was there, killed them, took the portal, killed the off laner, and it was just like this weird fucking just cruising through, and it's just, that shouldn't have been possible. That was just, it just helped snowball.
I mean, that was
100%.
Jelly. Yeah, that was Jelly 101 tricks right there. He would literally just, I mean, as soon as he finished one camp, wouldn't even full clear his one side. He would go through, kill, we'd almost always get a double kill, or at least push one out, right? And then he goes through the portal again. Sometimes Convey would go through the portal with him to help facilitate it, especially if it was like a harder, one to gank or whatever. Get the kill, clear through his blue, invade, clear through their jungle, come back through, invade, and he would be he's like, dude, I'm healthy, I have all the money in the world, and I've killed everybody. Like,
Everybody is now playing scared.
Because, and he goes back, buys more, and now there's just nobody can stop him. And we saw that in game after game. He was just like, dude, there's just no way that anyone's going to be able to realistically, unless he plays dumb, right? Unless he does something stupid and gets caught out, which would happen every once in a while. A little limit testing from Jelly Knees, and and that's not, again, I think we talked about that before. We didn't want the game to feel like that, right? Even though it was fun being the ones to Goomba stomp and do all those things, and initially it was like super exciting, just like, gosh, look how crazy strong we are. It didn't lend to a competitive thing. I still think from my previous argument that limiting the skills is going to make it to where all that stuff slows down. Jelly's not going to be as healthy to come in even at level 3 to possibly gank. Maybe he could, but it would really depend. So he's going to have to back, which means it's going to be slower coming back out, which means the laners and all that stuff are going to have the time to set up. I don't think the portals necessarily would, being activated or not activated, are going to have an impact on that. So I just don't like the idea of losing that uniqueness to being able to have, because it creates, to me, strategy. Like, if you are able to facilitate, so let's say that we wanted to invest in Jelly, being able to spend the time, like, having, the support roaming with you, keeping you healthy, getting those levels, doing all that stuff, and then coming in, I want that to be rewarded. I want there to be opportunity. We're just having to work around it or play smarter to make that kind of stuff happen. And so being able to take the portal or whatever, I just think it made it feel like, because you know how, like, in League or in other MOBAs in general that don't have that, sometimes you just end up with a player who's just on an island the whole time. They never feel like they're able to do anything. And whenever we would have a fifth player who was playing off lane, it was so nice to know that at any point in time they could be coming through, or vice versa, their enemy could be coming through, and so you're always aware, you're always paying attention to both sides of the lane, and I thought that that was fun. I liked it that there was like, again, it could just be me, maybe other people had the same issue, but that's just how I feel about it. But yeah, I'm ready to move on. Sorry.
Yeah, let's move on to it. There's another interesting one. Adjusting
Yes.
hero and item balance. We often saw that some player tier charts were very similar to the index created based on the play data of top players. So they're combining what the community thinks with their actual data of how the hero actually was. We noticed that our dedicated players analysis was shown in the statistics, and some were even more accurate than the statistics. The team will continue to collect and review the actual data and player feedback, and both sets of information will be used to improve hero and item balance. So, okay, I got a lot to say on this, but I'm gonna turn it over to Jelly.
I mean, they were definitely listening to the three of us about heroes being broken or not. Actually, not Mangoose. Mangoose didn't think Shade was broken, but
It wasn't.
Oh, okay, Mangoose. Yeah, get him in the comments below. Sick. You guys know Shade was busted. But I think this is a cool thing to see, right? That players are intuitively feeling the same thing that the data is showing, right? And even if it's just the top players, right? That they are showing the same trend among both things, which is a really cool thing to see witnessed. In addition to that, I think it's important that they do take both into account, because sometimes a character isn't broken, they're just unfun to play against, and that feels broken in a lot of ways too. So I mean, I think the first closed beta test is a perfect example with Kayla, right? Kayla had 2 lockdown CCs and so much damage, it was ridiculous, that she was not only strong, she was unfun to play against. So they had to tune her down, her numbers, and change it so that she was more fun and more balanced to play against, just player to player wise. So taking both into account is huge, because you can see that Shade's win percentage is 99.9% of games that he's in, right? And players think him having a root on his ultimate is the most bonkers thing on the planet and it's unfun, right? So you can tune his numbers and get rid of the root, and then that makes it worthwhile for both players, and it acts as one balance for the character as well.
Jedi?
You want me to chime in? Yeah, so
Yeah, go
I
for
mean,
it.
I agree with the shade. There's some definite balance changes that need. You know what, Jelly hit the nail on the head. I'm just gonna agree with him in this. The difference between being overpowered and just not fun to play against, and we felt that across all types of games, right? Like, it's Master Yi in League of Legends. Like, is Master Yi broken? No. Is he a pain in the ass to play against with somebody who knows how to play Master Yi? Of course. Everybody hates him. He gets banned in solo queues just because of that reason. Yumi is another one. Hate to play against Yumis. Why? Because they're annoying. I'm not saying that a game shouldn't have annoying characters. Like, there is something to be said about having the most hated character in it or something like that. But I think when talking about this in particular, their little blurb here, again, it comes back to the fact that they were listening to players, they were analyzing data, which is a big thing we talked about. Like, okay, they said they were collecting all this data. What is that going to translate to? And I guess I'm more surprised that their data that they were going up with was very close in line, or even sometimes more accurate with what the players were saying. The players were giving them such accurate data, and showing how, either broken or underpowered or a combination of all the above. And that was something I know we were all really, really hard on in our analysis of it, was that items felt underwhelming at times, or not utilization, or the balance of different heroes. Like, Shade to me was really insanely overpowered in the hands of somebody who knew how to play him, and then completely underwhelming and a joke for somebody who didn't, right? And so just getting the feedback, again, the key words, data, player feedback, we're going to use both of these things to make it better. It's hard to complain when you hear that, but I would love to hear what Mangoose has to impart on this.
Before Mangoose uses your words that you just said against the Shade argument, just because he was unusable in the hands of someone who didn't know how to use him does not mean he's not broken, Mangoose. Let me just get that out of the way first.
What I was going to say on that particular topic is, I'm coming from the perspective of a mid laner, because that's what I mainly played in the game. As a mid laner, he was stupid fucking easy to play against, because as a mid laner, you have access to the stasis gem, And so what you would do is he would ult you, you would immediately stasis, he would blow his entire load on an invulnerable target, and then you would just wipe the floor with him. And I saw that time and time again. And then even as when I played ADC quite a few times against Shade, this was probably due to people not knowing how to play him, but it was, he would ult me and then I would kill him in his ult, like no problem. But I don't know. I didn't think Shade was all that. But anyway, more to the point, I like that they're taking both player feedback and actual statistics into mind. What always comes to mind when talking about this topic is Chimera and Paragon. I called him in the hero review the Scourge of Silver Elo because he was insane at that level. When people are brand new to the game and don't know how to play, and you've got this guy leaping on you and healing up and doing all this fucking damage and interrupting you and all this shit. It's like, oh my god. You get to like gold or platinum and it's like, why the fuck did you just pick Chimera? Like, what? Pick an actual jungler. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, when you got to like Diamond and Master, like I hear a lot of those guys saying like a really well played Chimera was still good, but he was not overpowered by any means. But if you talk to some Paragon players back in the day, if you said, is anybody overpowered, they would immediately say Chimera. So I'm glad that they're looking at the data to actually confirm, is this hero overpowered? I thought Kayla, like, even in the first CBT, I didn't think she was all that overpowered, but I could tell that she could be in the right hands. I just didn't play anybody that used her in the right hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he didn't play against me, so I get it.
I would have mopped the floor with you, but
well, I mean, even something that happened in this most recent CBT was they nerfed Kayla during the patch that they released Narbash in. They nerfed her ultimate specifically, right? And even Mangoose, I remember you saying it, but I heard it from other people too. They're like, "Well, that wasn't needed." And me being the Kayla player, I was like, "Yes, it was, like 100%." Like that's but that's something that's really cool to see that maybe it's unrecognizable or harder to see for people that aren't playing the character all the time. But me, who was dominating on the character, who was definitely weaker than the first CBT, could still be like, no, there's still aspects to her that need tweaking, and watch them find it, right? Just being that her ultimate needed just a little less damage under it to feel better and feel more fun to play against, right? Because nothing's worse than a Kayla jumping on you, dagger, jump, ult, you die. Congratulations, bye, have fun. Like, right? So I think it's cool to see that they're finding the little things as well as the bigger problems and are going to address it with statistics and player feedback.
Yeah, I mean, a final piece on this, because I know we're going long here, but I think the big one is just exactly that. I mean, there's always going to need to be item and hero balance in every MOBA, every competitive game. As more heroes come out that can counter other heroes, you're going to need to see things adjusted and all that fun stuff. I think the part that in this particular section is the team will continue to collect and review the actual data and player feedback, because I mean, again, using my Master Yi analogy or Chimera as an analogy, you do need those champions that feel strong for new players, right? You need to know that there's a relatively easy, straightforward champion, whether it's Garen or anything else, where you can go in, play the game, kind of get familiar with the stuff, and yeah, it's going to destroy and lower elos. It is what it is, but once you develop the IQ of the game, you're going to be like, yeah, why would you ever play this one? You're not going to see, Master Yi, for example, on the stage in, pro play, because it's just too easy to counter. The really good players are going to know how to beat them, right? So I don't want to see where there's not like access to both. The lower elo champions can be strong versus when they become higher. The main thing for me, again, takeaway, is the fact that they're collecting the data, listening to the data, and we'll see what it looks like once they actually implement it. But if that's a core piece of what they're wanting to do and stay on top of consistently, I'm excited, especially since they only did the one CBT like that, or this most recent CBT as part of that reference. It's really cool. I'm really excited.
Moving on to implementing player feedback on game characteristics. This was probably my absolute favorite paragraph of the entire thing. The team has collected player feedback and expectations from players. We are going to organize the topics and upload the list to Trello. We will show that we reviewed requests from our players by making improvements. They're basically saying, we're going to show you that we listen to you by making the improvements that you asked for. And they're going to show their work. They're not just going to give us the long division answer and we wonder if it's a fucking guess or not. They're going to show their work. I love that. I love this so much. Jedi, any input from this one?
No, I am the same way as you. Just it's again for me. It's throughout this whole thing, and this just is the culmination of it. It's like we're listening to you. We know what your expectations are. We want you to keep telling us what your expectations are, and the whole transparency aspect. Like we want to get this information in front of you, so that way you can give us more feedback. And I again, it just makes me really excited. When we talked about this before, we mentioned a lot about what is it's going to take for these teams to be successful. What is it going to take? And this is them. I think if everything goes the way that they're going to try and make it work, the game actually is fun to play and it's good. This is, I think, the type of team that it's going to progress past some of these other, the competition, I guess, if you want to put it that way, and break into maybe, the top 5 of MOBAs and see what that looks like, because without that as your main focus, your game is going to be doomed. And a lot of teams will say it, not a lot of them follow through with it. And so if this is a true statement and they're going to be transparent, putting information out there, describing why they do what they do, the players are going to stick around. I'm excited.
Smudge.
What about you, Jelly?
Yeah, I completely agree with that 100%, right? Like it's just being able to manage the feedback and show directly what that feedback is leading to and how it's being fixed and implemented and all those things, I think is absolutely amazing and should be echoed by more of these companies for sure.
Yep, 100%. Let's move on to actions for third-party programs and cheating players. Technical actions protection via GameGuard supported by Netmarble Security. What's GameGuard, Jelly? Do you know? Jedi, do you know?
I feel like I've heard of it, but past that, I couldn't. I assume it's another easy anti-cheat equivalent.
Yeah, Battle Eye, some easy anti-cheat, something like that.
Yeah.
Scheduled actions, consistent action, establish a consistent data-oriented auto-restriction system based on the CBT results. Immediate action, implement a system that performs an immediate analysis and implements restrictions when player reports are received. Okay, that's new for me.
I mean, that to me is if you come out of a game and 9 out of 10 players, being you're the 10th player, report you for toxicity, then the system goes, yeah, you're probably toxic, and just hits the button on you.
Yeah.
Right? Like and you can appeal that, that's fine. But when there's enough consistency behind the reports and it's not, and I'm sure it'll take into account amount of times that someone has reported people in the past and accuracy of those reports, right? But when there's overwhelming people going like, yeah, that guy's toxic, the system will just go, okay, I agree, toxic, ban them.
Yeah.
Right? Or chat ban or whatever the equivalent then their action is.
I like that they're letting us know this. I want to see it in practice, really.
I kind of hope that they also they were doing it via Discord. I hope there's an in-game aspect to it too. I know for me, I like knowing that I'm heard, right? So if I report somebody and there is an action taken, I don't necessarily need to know what you did to them, right? I don't need to know that far, whether it was a ban hammer or whatever it is. Knowing that you heard it and that an action has been taken, whether that's them reaching out to them, because I know sometimes you have a bad game, right? Let's be honest. There's moments where we've all probably been toxic in game. You get pissed, you're typing some dumb shit in chat, and you probably shouldn't have said the things you should. So there is an element of toxicity that is relatively okay in a competitive environment, and then there's the dropping N-words and doing that, like, or trying to get past like profanity filters that are obvious. Like that's the stuff where it's just like, okay, get this guy out of the game. So I'm excited to see one that they're even addressing it. They were doing it already in the CBT. I thought that was really cool. We talked about it last time in the video that they were just like, man, they are on top of getting rid of these guys. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. I hope the feedback is something that we get to see in game. I know that might not always be an easy thing to implement, but even if they just keep it up with the stuff, reporting it on Discord or something along those lines, like they were, I think that'll be exciting.
I would love to see a rotating banner of like just a small little rotating banner in the top right corner of my screen or bottom right corner of my screen that just goes like, so and so just got banned for toxicity.
Like
so
a
and so
ticker?
just got banned. Yeah, just like Just something small, right? Like
Sure.
that, where then it's like, yeah, they did. Good on them. Ban those guys, right? Like make it like a news story feeling almost that it like they tell you that. And like you said, Viking, having when you report someone in league, right? And they get
Yeah.
and they get banned shortly after your report within a time frame, it pops up and says like, "Thanks for reporting this person effectively. Like an action has been taken against them." Which is
Right.
the most like feel good feeling on the
100%.
planet.
It is.
Especially when it's like right after a game and you know the bunch of people are reporting a guy and you all report him and immediately get the thing. It's like, yeah, screw you, dude. Like
Yeah,
it's
and it does.
such
It
a good
feels good.
feeling.
It is. And I know this is a slight deviation, but when it comes to these kind of like aspects, I'm really hoping that as far as like the toxicity, because we've mentioned it a few times about toxic players in the game. I would honestly love to see one of these MOBA teams, and I don't know, and they haven't talked about it in this, so it's probably not going to be implemented. But by the weird chance that they are watching this video, I would love to see a thing that is more rewarding people who are consistently positive in game too. Like League does have their honor system, which I think is pretty neat. You can earn some in-game items and stuff like that, and cosmetics for it. There's also like Final Fantasy, for example, has like a whole process for when new players are coming in. Older players know that this guy's a new player, and it's encouraged to help them and get them involved. And so I would love to see one of these teams put something out like that to kind of again, because I think that's a big part of this is we saw it in the CBT. The toxic part can push people away, and I know I've mentioned a lot in these videos that we as a community have a huge impact on that. Don't be a piece of shit. Help people. You know what I mean? And I think that if the devs were to come up with a way and be like, hey, these guys are consistently being said in feedback that they're helpful. Let's give them again an in-game, icon or something to be like, I'm an ambassador for this sport. I'm an ambassador for this game, and it feels good. Because I think you can have the both, right? You can have like negative people need to be punished, but positive people or encouraging of positive behavior is also a benefit. So I would love to
Mhm.
see something like that. And maybe they do have something in plan for that, but it's just not listed here, so I'm kind of doubtful.
Yeah.
But what about you, Mingus? Anything else to add on this before we get to the next and last section?
No, I think Here's the Storm has a good way of doing it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about that some other time. Let's move on to 4, the official release plan. When the internal team is ready, we will run a brief test to check the aforementioned topics when we can provide early access for players. So it sounds like they're going to do a brief beta test before they go full early access. And we are at the final polishing stage and are getting ready for the next phase, the official release. It is indescribable how excited and nervous we are. Thank you to everyone who has been with us and supported us from the very beginning. Shout Well, okay, this is where the English is breaking down. Shout out to all our moderators who have also helped us so much. Yeah, Jelly, what do you got?
This is exactly it. Is that they are right there for release, right? And we talked about it after the first CBT, and after the second one, right? That they're getting very very close to having to push out that early access title, right? And so this emphasizes that even brief tests, right? I wonder if it's going to be like a 3-day thing that they go, okay, we'll do a 3-day weekend. And then at the end of the weekend, assuming all goes well, they go, and we're live. Congrats. Like, just be done with it. I've seen games do it in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, Hunt Showdown did that, right?
Yep.
Literally the day after their test ended. They're like, congrats, guys. Everything went well. Here's the game. Like, and just pushed it out for early access at that same time. I could definitely see them doing something like that to kind of they build the hype from the test and then even further push it along, kind of a good start for a full release after a successful test.
Jedi?
I mean, honestly, it just them even saying official release plan made me excited. As soon as I saw that as a blurb, I was like, oh, here we go. Like, them saying that at the final polishing stage, like, I mean, and it's maybe I'm a little goofy here, but I actually like that they said they're excited and nervous, right? So many times I feel like with these games, it's like they got this like over the top alpha mentality, like this is of course going to be amazing, like we've got this all locked down, like this is going to be the best, like and they want to like throw that like I like that they're saying we're excited but nervous. Like they know that this
Mhm.
is a big undertaking. They know, and I feel like that's been throughout the way the whole thing feels is that they understand the gravity at which they're trying to embark upon. And I can't wait for early access. I'm half tempted, even if they do a slightly open or maybe like by invitation closed beta, to skip it just to see the early access. I don't know if I'll be able to avoid it. I might, but I don't know if I want to be spoiled by any of the stuff. But just as as a final part for this, I'm just excited that they do feel like they're on the end of the path here. I hope it's before the holidays. I would love to be maybe. I mean, maybe I'm being too much, but before the end of summer, I'd be so stoked if we were going into the fall season with Overprime to play.
Well, they've said before that official release was going to be this year. And not only
Mhm.
that, but console release was going to be this year along with
Alongside,
official
yeah.
release. So that's what excites me the most is that
Yeah,
I think we can expect console release, which they've also said that they don't plan to do crossplay, which kind of sucks, but just having that out as a game on PlayStation,
Mhm.
and we know it's going to be at least on PS5, maybe not PS4, we don't know yet. We don't know yet, but I mean, from what we're looking at right here, it's going to be on PS5 and PC this year still. Like they seem like
Mhm.
they're on track, and that's really really exciting news for so many people. I just hope that they change their mind about crossplay, and I hope enough of us can raise our concerns about that until they do release it crossplay.
I mean, I think they'd have to. Like, let's be honest, right? Like after these last few like games of like VR games, especially, like it's just Fortnite, for example, was the first one to really do it, right? To break it open to all of the consoles, the PC, everything like that, on your phone, even. Like, literally you could play with everybody at all times. It's 2022. Let's be real, right? Like you should be able to play with everybody. I understand that there might be some issues with servers and stuff like that that make it a little bit difficult. And so I'm fine with if it's a eventual road plan thing that they put out, like they're saying like, hey, initial release, we're just trying to get it into your hands so you can play it. And then once we get some of this stuff figured out, we'll be able to start getting cross-platform and stuff like that. But I think for the healthiness of their game, having their player base separated is going to be bad. So getting people to be able to play with each other, because I think with these types of MOBAs, it doesn't really matter if you're playing PC or with a console controller. I think for the most part, maybe you're not going to be able to 360 people, but I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing. So yeah, I'd be really, really surprised if they don't eventually go to crossplay. But just hearing the words that we're coming to console, I know every single video that you guys put out on in this is always 2 to 3 comments about, but who's coming to console? So I mean, Overprime they've
That's
said
what they
they're going
sound
to.
like.
That is,
That's
I mean,
exactly what I hear every time I
I
read
know.
that comment.
Listen, I'm not like a total PC master race guy. I have consoles. I love my consoles. There's nothing wrong with consoles. It's just the console gamers. I feel like have become for like in their own mind's eye like this like stepchild of like we'll get to you when we get to
No,
you.
and I don't think it's in their mind's eye. It really is. They're the stepchildren here with all these
I don't
games.
know if that's true. I
Dude,
mean, maybe for
everybody is
these
going
games, but
PC, and like it's understandable why they're doing that. But the PlayStation players have been left out, and they were the biggest part of the Paragon
Mhm.
community. They
true.
they need to be part of this. Like,
This isn't Paragon, okay? That was 6
okay,
years ago
okay,
or whatever, okay?
true,
This is
right? You're
Overprime. No,
right.
I mean, listen, I want it in the hands of all the gamers. Like, again, I'm not Mr. PC Master Race here. I think that it should be. In fact, I would love it for it to be not only cross-platform, but cross-utilization, so that you have the fidelity between. If I'm playing on PC, I should also then be able to go and play it on my TV. Like, if
Mhm.
that's where I want to be and that's where I'm comfortable, and I don't feel like being in Discord maybe, but I want to play the game. That's where I should be able to do it. So I do think that the technology is obviously there. We know that it is. I just don't know how hard it is to implement these things. But I do think that the ones that make it a priority to not only have it on console, have it on PC, but then implement cross-platform are going to be rapidly more successful than the others. I mean, it's going to be needed, I think, for this game in particular, because again, for the old heads, the guys that played Paragon back in the day, they are a lot of them coming from console, and so if you don't have it, they're probably not going to play your game. So I think it's important, if anything, just to be respectful of the history of the player base that you're appealing to. So I'm excited to see that the game's coming. So we'll see. Jelly.
I'm excited. I hope it's before the end of the summer, but overall, this year in general is going to be huge. And with this post gives me a lot of hope for the team to make the decisions to make the game great and make the game better. And I think that's super cool.
Final thoughts, guys, on just the overall post?
I
think I just gave them.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, great. I love this post. To me, it was everything that I asked for. I know we asked for in our video about Overprime. We wanted to hear what their data was. We wanted to hear from them what their plans were to address some of the things, and maybe not in extreme detail, which I don't blame any developer for not, going into extreme detail, but they went into pretty good detail. You guys should go read it, look at it yourself. I personally would love to hear what you guys also took away from all this. What it is that made you excited. If you weren't a fan of Overprime, maybe did this give you hope that Overprime could be good? So I'm really interested to see what the topic of discussion is down in the comments, and see what everybody else thinks, because obviously we're just three guys talking about it, but it's the community at large that really needs to back this company and back this game to make it successful. So I'm really interested to see what everybody has to say about it. But I'm excited. That's just my overall take. I liked the CBT. I liked the game. It felt the best to me to play. I'm interested to see if it still feels as good when it comes out with some of the changes that they did. But overall, I'm excited. That's my final pieces.
And I think there was just an overall theme to this post, and that theme was, we hear you. This is how we hear you. This is what we're going to do about what we heard from you. And it's just like a huge process of how much they value player feedback, how much they value interacting with the players and letting them know that their feedback is being heard and utilizing that feedback. So I think that's a really great way for them to go. And
whoever wrote this
it's
post
hard not to love.
Whoever wrote this post has done extensive couples counseling, because they knew all the points they hit.
Shit. But that's going to wrap it all up. Jelly has a YouTube and a Twitch. I don't think he's done either one in
many months.
About a year.
Not that long?
No, it's been a few months. Viking Jedi has a Twitch and a YouTube that will be linked below, and he hasn't done anything in probably about 2-3 years.
No, not that long. It's definitely been over a year. Again, I think I said this last time. You don't have to plug me on there. I'm honestly just happy to be here, part of this discussion. And Mangoose never does this, guys, but I've had such a blast being part of these discussions. I've loved reading your guys' comments. You're obviously a very passionate fan group. You're a passionate fan group of Mangoose. I'm just happy to be part of these discussions and get to put out, my thoughts and feelings on not only these games, but, obviously doing beta mails as well. It's been a lot of fun. So if this is the kind of content that you guys like, and you want me to be part of it, this is where you'll find me, probably, as long as these guys still like putting up with me and my beard and all that stuff. So no, this is it. I don't have any shout outs. The shout out is being here. That's my shout out.
Right on. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed that little tour down the Overprime lane, but this is, I guess, for the Minions crew. This is sort of a for the Minions sort of thing. This is the three of us signing off. You guys have a good one. I was better at Overprime. Mangoose! Special shout out to channel members: I, Bloodhunter, Jelly Knees, Meow Mix for Men, Stunt, Raven, and Blastoise King.